In this video, I will be using our base monk character to go through the Way of the Open Hand monastic tradition. If you recall from our previous video, we took our monk up to level 2 in preparation for acquiring the class specialization at level 3, thus preparing our ability to actually acquire our first monastic tradition. The Way of the Open Hand tradition focuses entirely on martial arts, using your ki or chi to advance your combat prowess as well as creating a means to heal your body or provide protection. Through the course of this monastic tradition, your character will gain the ability to knock their opponents prone, prevent them from taking reactions, and even push them back with an unarmed strike. You will also gain the ability to heal yourself and meditate to gain the benefits of a sanctuary spell. And finally, at the higher levels, the end goal of this tradition leads to an ever-powerful Quivering Palm feature that can practically kill any creature you use this feature on in the single hit of an unarmed strike. This is all in addition to the normal monk features you will gain as you level your character up. So with that, let's actually begin the process of taking this particular character through the various levels until we achieve level 20. In relation to level 3, we're going to acquire our monastic tradition as well as the ability to deflect missiles. We still have a plus 10 foot bonus to our movement speed. We will now have 3 key points as opposed to 2, and you will see that this is going to always equal our level, so it's not something I'm always going to make a mention of, but it will be something that we will have to adjust in relation to the number of uses that we have, and I can get rid of that. Our martial arts damage is still going to make use of a 1d4 hit die, and our proficiency bonus is still going to be plus 2, and that's actually not a hit die, it's a damage die. My apologies. So with that, let's actually drop our level into place. As you can see, we have 3 options when it comes to our monastic tradition. These are the 3 options that are provided by the player's handbook. I suspect there are additionals that are provided by other supplements, but I'll get to those a little bit later. One we want to choose in this case is the Way of the Open Hand. The first thing I will do is ensure that our total number of key points here that we can use is increased to 3. I really wish they would allow us a way to set this as equal to level. That way you don't have to worry about modifying it. It's automatic. But right now we can't do that. And as you can now see, we have the ability to use this 3 times. And again, that's between a short and a long rest. So at level 3, you gain 2 specific features. One is called the Open Hand Technique, and the other is called Deflect Missiles. In this particular case, I will go over Deflect Missiles first. With Deflect Missiles, you gain the ability to catch and or return any ranged ammunition that is fired at you and hits you. Potentially. So the way this works is that when you are hit with a ranged weapon attack, and this is something that you have to have the ability to physically catch. So arrows, spears, bullets, ammunition of that type all applies, and this includes sling bullets as well as rifle and pistol bullets if you're playing a campaign that has those guns. This ability allows you to catch all of that, and then for the purposes of your reaction, you have proficiency to return that if conditions are met. And what I mean by that is that when you are hit with a ranged weapon and you choose to deflect that arrow, you have the ability to roll a 1d10, take that value, and add your dexterity modifier plus your character level in order to cancel out a specific amount of the damage. If you reduce the total amount of that damage to 0 or lower, you can then return that arrow, now you've caught it, and throw it back at anything you want to throw it at. So you could return it to the person who shot it at you. You could use that to throw it at an entirely different creature, or you can use it for whatever purpose you see fit. If, however, you do decide to throw the weapon back, you will have to use a key point, or chi point, and it has to be done in the same reaction that you caught the missile. For the purposes of proficiency, you will be proficient in order to make that return. So you will gain your dexterity modifier, you will gain your proficiency bonus when you're making your attack roll, and then you will gain whatever proficient damage applies to that particular weapon. So you would apply your, most likely your dexterity bonus in this case, to the actual damage of that particular weapon. However, because the way reactions work, you are limited to one reaction per round. And what that means is that if you have gone through your entire turn, the last opponent in that particular round has shot an arrow at your direction, hits you with it, you take your reaction to deflect that arrow, reduce the damage to 0, and throw it back, that counts. But if that arrow was shot at you earlier in the turn, or round I should say, and you went through that whole process, and then another arrow was shot at you later on in that same round, you cannot deflect that missile, that second missile. You've already used your reaction. You only get one reaction per round. This also means that if you have set up a ready action that did not specify a specific method or trigger that would allow you to deflect that missile, you will not be able to use a reaction. That's because you have already set up your reaction to look for a very specific condition that you have defined when you set up that ready action. Therefore, you would not be prepared to deflect that missile. So you'll want to keep that in mind. You'll either want to set up a ready action to do something, or give yourself the ability to deflect a missile. At the same time, if you've deflected a missile earlier in the round, and then someone who is within 5 feet of your character decides to leave your sphere of influence, you would not be able to take an attack of opportunity on that character when they left. And this is because an attack of opportunity is classified as a reaction. So it follows the same rules and guidelines. Now, for the purposes of keeping the chat log informed, as well as the Dungeon Master, it's best to add this particular ability to your reaction, or your actions tab here. So just drag it and drop it in. This is a monk ability. This is not specific to your monastic tradition. And you'll notice here that it doesn't give you the ability to do anything. But we can actually set up a little bit of a convenience aspect to this to make things a little bit easier as you're gaming, so you don't have to worry about thinking about it. The first is, how do you easily handle your ability to reduce the incoming damage? Well, if you've already had an arrow shot at you, you could potentially allow the Dungeon Master to roll that damage. Then what you could do is execute a heal on this particular feature, and that would reduce the overall damage. So it would essentially negate the actual damage. What I mean is this. So let's add a new action, and we'll add a heal feature. If we take our information here, we can reduce this by 1d10, plus your dexterity modifier, plus your monk level. All right. So it's going to be on you. It's not going to affect anybody else. We want to add a new item here, and all I did is I left-click on this little slash, and then left-clicked on this plus for add item. Drag in your 1d10, and for simplicity's sake, so that you don't have to always worry about this, it makes sense to set this multiplier by a level, because it's going to be 1 times the level. So the only way this can actually be a number here, is if you actually put in anything higher than a 1. If you put a 1 in, it clears it out. And I need to clear this out. The other thing you want to make sure is your dexterity bonus should go here. And the reason I've done that this way, so it's +4 for this character. The reason why I've done it this way is chances are your level is going to increase before your dexterity bonuses increase. Now, that may not be the case in the sense that at level 4 you might choose to increase your dexterity, thereby increasing your bonus that you're receiving for it, but that's fine. That's a once in an X number of levels change. And you can't really get anything past level 20 through the ability score improvements that you do naturally acquire as you level through your character. Which is why I put the dexterity bonus here. Your level is going to be constantly increasing. So you're not always going to have to want to go back in here and make the adjustment. By setting it this way, it will automatically do that for us. And as we can see here, our bonus is +7 because we're currently level 3 and we have a bonus of +4. So that gives us +7. So how is this actually going to work? Well, what I can do is add everybody to the combat tracker here. So just give me 1 second. All right, load up the combat tracker here. So I have provided an ape that has the ability to throw a rock. A rock is classified as a ranged attack, which means I can deflect this missile. Okay, good. Just get myself some room here so that I can actually see something. So let me set up the actor to be the ape. So they're going to attack our monk. Target that monk. And they're going to make a ranged attack. Well, that was a critical fail. Let's try that again. That is a hit. So now I do the damage. In this particular case, I have taken 8 points of damage. And you can see that that is reflected here. If I now execute this, excellent. I have healed myself for 12 points of damage. Now, this does have a major side effect. If your roll exceeds the amount of damage you're canceling out, that will have to be manually adjusted by the Dungeon Master. And what I mean by that is, let's say, for example, that our character here actually has taken a total of 20 points of damage. All right? That includes the 8 points that they just took. But I've now rolled a 12, which means I cannot heal all 12 points of damage. I can only heal the original 8 that I suffered. So the Dungeon Master has to reduce. So let's say 12 is repair, so that takes us to 8. What that means is that when you make this heal roll, it's automatically going to take you back to the 8. The Dungeon Master is then going to have to re-add the 4 points of damage it shouldn't have healed. Okay, so you see here where it's now at 12. This would have been the hit point count that you should have been at. The reason for that is that you're not healing yourself beyond the ability to cancel out the damage. So there is a small flaw with this particular setup. But I still say that the benefits outweigh the potential issue here. The reason being is you've pretty much confirmed that you have canceled out all of the damage. Excellent. That means you can now make an attack roll. So what do I need to do to set that up? Well, there are a couple of ways that we can go about setting that up. One way, and I'm going to show this for the first time ever in any of my video series, it's something that I just literally learned earlier this week, is that you can actually set a series of defaults for the group that you have created. It's been there for quite a while. The ability to do so has been in there for quite a while. I literally just learned it this week, so I'm more or less interested in showing it off a little bit. The other option is that we can modify the action that we're going to have to add to this by default. So, the first thing we need is we will need an action. And in this case, we will need a cast. And to get to that, in case you missed it, I'm either right-clicking here or right-clicking here. It doesn't really matter as long as it's within any element specific to this particular feature. And I want to add a cast, and that'll drop this empty element in here. And I've done that intentionally so that you can I can showcase what happens when you modify the entire group. So within here, we have, if you will, default settings. So anything within this particular group will make use of this ability or this attack configuration or this saving throw configuration. It simplifies things for you. And in this case, if we set this to dexterity, and we also set our attack to dexterity, there we go. What will happen is that when I set up this particular attack, it will take that default. So if I go with a ranged attack, because you need to set the actual type of the attack before it will go through and set everything up. Well, you can see that it's already set up as +6. It's taking our dexterity modifier, which is +4, adding our +2 proficiency bonus, and giving us +6. That is already set up for use. The other option is we could have just simply set this up right here in this grouping by making sure that we simply set this to ability, set this to dexterity plus the proficiency. We still get the +6. If you leave it at group attack, it will take whatever is set up within this power group configuration, or you can set it up individually. It's entirely up to you. It doesn't really much matter. The benefit by using the power group is that it is already pre-configured. Therefore, any new actions that you add that require a cast or an attack or anything like that will automatically calculate the bonus. Any heals you do that use an ability score will automatically calculate the appropriate bonus, etc., etc. The last thing I would like to point out is that you can also set it up for your default saving throws, if you will. And when it comes to the monk, their key dictates what their saving throw is most likely going to be in relation to using your chi or your key to trigger a saving throw of some kind. And that is going to be wisdom in this particular case. So it's 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus your wisdom modifier. So we'll want to make sure that this is set up for wisdom. Okay, so now our ranged attack is configured. And because in relation to this last line here, doesn't matter what is shot at us, an arrow, spear, bullet, whether it's a sling or ammunition from a rifle, if you're going to catch any of those, you then become temporarily proficient in that particular item, if you will, so that when you do throw it back at someone or you throw it at somebody else, you make a proficient attack. That's why we are able to make use of a +6 attack bonus here. What about our damage? Well, the same thing applies. Well, in relation to our damage, we don't have to worry about configuring multiple types of damage for all of the various different things that could be flung back at us, or shot at us, rather. The reason being is that, for all intents and purposes, deflect missiles, any weapon that you hold as a returned object, so let's say an arrow was shot at you, well, for the purpose of you flinging that arrow back at the target, it is classified as a monk weapon. That means you can make use of this martial arts die roll here. So you don't have to worry about actually figuring out what is the actual damage of an arrow versus what is the actual damage of a sling bullet versus what is the actual damage of a spear, for example. You literally just set it up so that it is your martial arts die roll here. So what we do is we add a new action here called damage. We pop this open, add a new item, and then drag our 1d4 in here. And the benefit is that as you level up, this is going to increase and improve. In addition, we want to make sure that we add our dexterity bonus to this. And the damage type is piercing. And that sets up our damage. So now we have pretty much everything set up for use. So in the case of this particular attack, if I now actually make the ranged attack, except I don't have that targeted, so let's target the ape, for example. Now, if I make that ranged attack, that is going to hit. And then for the damage, all I do is roll that. And you can see that the ape has now taken 5 points of damage. We're done. We're set up. The only thing, and I'll remind you on this, the only thing you will have to take into account is that when you execute this heal roll, you want to make sure that the Dungeon Master undoes any excess healing that occurred. So in this case, because I only took 8 points of damage, yet I rolled a 12, it would have healed my character for 12 points of damage. So the Dungeon Master will then have to reapply the missing 4 points of damage. That is something that you'll want to be cognizant of, and I highly recommend that you set things up this way because it does simplify how Deflect Missiles works within this game. With open hand technique, as the next feature I'm going to cover here, there are a couple of things that you have to be able to do. The first is whenever you make use of one of your key points or chi points to make use of Flurry of Blows, you can make a decision as to what happens when you've actually made use of Flurry of Blows on your particular opponent. And the three options that you have is that you can force them to make a dexterity saving throw. If they fail, they will be knocked prone. You can force them to make a strength saving throw. If they fail, you can push that creature up to 15 feet away from you, meaning that if they're 10 feet away from a cliff, you could theoretically push them off that cliff. And then the last one, you can choose to restrict its ability to take any reactions, which includes attacks of opportunities. So if you have a sorely wounded teammate and they're engaged with this particular creature, you can move in, make your attack, execute your Flurry of Blows, and then choose that last reaction, or that last option, to restrict their ability to use a reaction, so that your teammate can essentially exit that particular character's sphere of influence, or that particular opponent's sphere of influence, and not suffer an attack of opportunity. It's very, very useful. There are a few things that we could actually go through and do to make this a little bit easier to use, though, because you do have several options. Obviously, the first one is going to be dragging into your actual actions page here, and I'm going to put this under the way of the hand, because I like to keep open hand. Powers group. And that way, anything that is going to be acquired from our class specialization is kept separate from those provided by our monk class. Now, you can actually see here that there's already the prone effect. Well, it's set up for your dexterity saving throw, and that takes care of this particular feature here, but this dexterity saving throw is currently wrong. To fix that, all you have to do is modify this value, and you do that by clicking on this magnifying glass here. Once you've got this window open, the damage type, or the saving throw type I should say, is already selected and set correctly, but this saving throw entry part has to be adjusted. And it's going to be 8 plus ability, and you want to make sure you set this to wisdom. In relation to setting up the check for the strength saving throw here, all we have to do is add a new cast action, and my mouse is being derpy today. Cast. Modify that. It's going to be a strength check, or strength saving throw, I mean. And we need to also set this to wisdom. And you can see here that we have the same values. So even though the stat here is going to be the same, it's actually the check type that is going to be different in relation to this particular saving throw. Now, we could have also set this up to use the group configuration here and set the default to wisdom, and that would have automatically calculated everything for us without having to make any adjustments here. In the case of the dexterity saving throw, you also have this prone effect that you can apply, and it's right here. But the strength saving throw ends up pushing that particular character 15 feet away. So that is literally simply nothing more than the Dungeon Master moving the token back 15 feet on the map. And if it happens to go over a cliff, it happens to go over a cliff. The last thing is around this reaction. Well, this is more of a reminder to the Dungeon Master that that particular opponent would not be able to take a reaction. That's just something that you'll have to communicate. And this is why I have stated that you need to put open hand here so that you can drag it into place or click this. Interesting. Only records which you own can be shared. There we go. I hate when it does that, but anyway. So you can click that. That way the Dungeon Master can see it and be reminded that you have used that particular technique. And that sets everything up for open hand technique. And with that, that actually completes everything that we need to do for level 3. So at level 4, we are going to have an increase in our key points. Nothing else really changes, but we are gaining an ability score improvement and our slow fall improvement, or feature if you will. So let's go ahead and apply this level. And I'm going to pop open the slow fall first. In relation to the slow fall ability, you are now able to potentially reduce the amount of damage that you receive as a reaction to falling. So whether you're knocked over a cliff, over the side of a wall, knocked off the roof of a building, whatever, you're going to suffer damage if that fall is high enough. With the slow fall ability, you can reduce that damage, and it is equal to 5 times your monk level. So, this is something that we can set up in our Actions tab. And we can do this by dragging this into place, and this is a default monk feature, so we'll want to make sure that we add it to the monk group. Group. And there. We want to add a new heal ability there. And we're going to set it up very similar to what we did here. But we're going to do it slightly differently. There isn't going to be a damage roll or a die roll in play. So what we want to do is set 5 times our level. And there's an LVL option here that we can go through and set up. So in this case, it is a 20 because we're level 4. 4 times 5 is 20. Now, this does suffer from the same flaw that this particular heal option suffers. And you'll see that this actually went up in level, or in our ability point, so that's great. And I'm just going to minimize that. If your fall damage was only 15 points of damage, you should not receive the additional 5 points of damage that you healed yourself for. You're not gaining your hit points back. You're just reducing the overall damage you took. Okay? Out of convenience, this gives you the ability to essentially go, oh, I'm healing myself, and reducing the amount of damage by that amount. The Dungeon Master will then have to just simply modify your actual hit points by a little bit to adjust for the difference. So if you suffered 15 points of fall damage, but obviously you're healing yourself for up to 20 hit points of damage, then they just simply have to reapply the 5 points of damage difference. That's all they have to do. I mean, the other option is that the damage just simply isn't applied. Well, if it's a manual roll, that's easy to do. But if it's an automatic roll, that's very tricky to do because your character's already suffered the hit points or suffered the damage. So the Dungeon Master's still going to be manipulating something regardless. But with having this particular ability here, you're showing in the audit logs that you've used your slow fall capability. And you can see that here, heal, slow fall. That way, if someone goes back and tries to write up or craft up a story for everything that's within the chat history here, they'll be able to do so and go, oh, he used his slow fall ability there, rather than go, why did this particular character get all of these hit points back or not suffer the damage that they took? That kind of thing. You've now got an audit there that you can actually see what actually happened. Or an audit entry, I should say. And that sets everything up for the slow fall feature. We still have to modify our key points, so I'm going to go do that now. Okay. And then finally, our ability score improvement. So anyone who has watched my previous videos knows what I'm about to say. The ability score improvement has 3 potential options, 2 of which you're guaranteed to choose one or the other of. The third option depends entirely on the Dungeon Master and how they're running that particular campaign you're going through. In relation to the first 2 guaranteed options, you have the ability to take one ability score, I should say, and modify that ability score by 2 points. So, for example, in relation to the dexterity there, I have an 18. Well, through my ability score improvement adjustment, I can add 2 points to that 18 to raise it to a 20. You cannot, however, exceed 20 hit points, or 20 points for your ability score. And that's just a natural requirement. However, if I had a magical item that was modifying my dexterity and already setting it to 20, I can still increase the ability score up to the point where it's a natural 20 as opposed to a modified 20. So if I had a ring of +2 to dexterity, my dexterity there would be 20. But my actual natural dexterity is still 18. So I could go through and add the 2 hit points or 2 ability points there and raise that to 20, giving me a total dexterity value of 22. That's how that would work. The second guaranteed option is that instead of choosing one ability score and raising it by 2 points, you can choose 2 ability scores and raise them each by 1 point. So in this particular case, this character has a pretty crappy strength and a pretty crappy intelligence and charisma. They're all suffering -1 penalties. I could potentially choose to raise my strength up to 11 using the first option and eliminating that strength penalty, or same thing with the intelligence and the charisma. In this particular case, though, strength, intelligence, and charisma don't necessarily really matter. Well, I suppose in some saving throws it could apply, but in this particular case, this character this early on really needs to be able to focus on the amount of damage they're doing. That means the dexterity, in my opinion, should be modified by 2. Now, what about that third option? Well, the third option is only going to be applicable if the Dungeon Master allows feats in their campaign. And feats are a whole new category of features, quote unquote, that allow you to add some additional capabilities to your character. So in the case of a monk, you could take this toughness one and it would actually add 2 additional hit points each time you gain a level, and your current hit point maximum would equal to twice your current level when you gain this feat. So that's how toughness works. But some dungeon masters feel that feats are a little bit overpowered, so they actually may be running a campaign where feats aren't even allowed. So the only 2 options you would have is taking a single ability score, modifying it by 2 points, or 2 ability scores and modifying it by 1 point each. In this video, I will add the dexterity here, and that's to show you, or add the points to the dexterity here, and that's just to show you what we have to adjust in the Actions tab. The next one I will do is a modification to the con, so when we get our next ability score improvement, I'll make sure that I do the Constitution, and then the third option I will choose is to go through and actually add an ability score when I get another ability score improvement. I will go through and add a feat, I should say. So, I'm going to bring this up to 20, and that's going to bring this bonus up to a +5. Well, for most things, all of the adjustments should have automatically applied. The one thing we do have to modify now that we've increased our dexterity is our heal ability here. And that's because this is where we are applying our bonus. So we have to simply change this from a 4 to a 5. And this is just to showcase pretty much the 1, possibly 2 times that you might have to go through and modify this particular bonus. That's it. And that completes everything for level 4. In relation to level 5, we are going to gain our extra attack feature, our stunning strike feature. We are finally increasing our actual damage die roll here, if you will. Our proficiency bonus is increasing, and we're gaining an additional key point. So let's apply the level. I don't want the background. I want the monk. There we go. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and modify our martial arts die. And essentially that's anywhere that you see a 1d4 here. That now gets replaced by a 1d6. So in the case of our Deflect Missiles feature, we need to modify this 1d4 plus 5 to a 1d6 plus 5. We do that by simply right-clicking, once we've opened this up, right-clicking on this die roll, and you'll see here that we have the option to clear dice. And that gets rid of that. And then all we do is drag in a 1d6. And now that's replaced. The other location that gets modified is in our martial arts section. We need to do the exact same thing. And then drop in 1d6. And that takes care of the changes in relation to our martial arts die. We don't have to do anything in relation to our proficiency bonus, but we do need to modify our key points. So we always flip this to preparation and set this to 5. As I've stated earlier, it's always going to be equal to your level. And now we have the option to use up to 5 key points, or chi points. Well, what about extra attack and stunning strike? Well, here's extra attack and stunning strike, and I will go over each of these features. In relation to stunning strike, when you make an attack with a melee weapon, and this includes your unarmed strike abilities, in addition to any monk-related weapons that you have, or any non-monk-related weapons that you have, you can spend 1 key point to essentially attempt a stunning strike with that particular attack. So you're still going to do the damage, but you're also going to potentially stun them. You're forcing them to make a Constitution saving throw, and they will be stunned for the duration of that particular turn. And it's actually until the end of your next turn. So they won't come out of that state until you have finished your second round after hitting them and stunning them. Just to give a point of clarity there. This means that we're going to want to add Stunning Strike to our Actions tab. And this is a monk ability. And there we go. And everything's pretty much set up for us. The only issue is that the Constitution saving throw here is actually incorrect. It shouldn't be a DC 8. It should be much higher. To correct that, because we've already got our group set, all we have to do is pop this open, and it will automatically fix the calculation. And that's it. Because this was pretty much mostly set up for us, there's nothing else we need to do for Stunning Strike. If you successfully succeed on applying that Stunning Strike, meaning that the opposing creature has failed their Constitution saving throw, then you simply apply the effect here. And that's how that will work in a combat situation. So the extra attack feature is going to give you the ability to now attack twice during your action phase, your attack action phase. So up until now, you have had the ability to attack once with a weapon or an unarmed strike, and then additionally as a bonus action, you had the ability to make an unarmed strike as that action. So you have been theoretically able to attack twice during a single round. Well, this now increases that ability to 3 attacks. And essentially what that will mean is that your main attack action is going to be 2 actual attacks. And it doesn't matter whether it's with your monk weapon or a fist or a kick or a headbutt, as long as it is a melee-based attack action. Then, as a bonus action, you can make your unarmed strike attack. So that gives you 3 attacks total. Now, during something like a reaction, while it might be classified as an attack action in relation to what you can actually physically return an attack on, such as an attack of opportunity and that creature's moving out of your sphere of influence, you still only get to make a single attack, not a double attack during your attack action. And that is based on the restrictions of the attack of opportunity. Now, to showcase that limitation, what you want to do is go to Library, open up your player's handbook, and pop open the reference manual. And I'll just close that in the background. Then you'll want to look for opportunity. Opportunity. And there are 2 locations that you're going to want to look at. Order of combat is essentially a detailed listing of all the steps that can be taken as part of that combat round, and reactions being one of them. But where you're actually going to find the details about the attack of opportunity itself is under making an attack. And if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see opportunity attacks. And the restriction here comes into play on this particular line. To make the opportunity attack, you use your reaction to make 1 melee attack against the provoking creature. That means even if you have the extra attack ability, you do not get to attack twice with it when you're doing an attack of opportunity. You literally only get the time, if you will, to actually make 1 reactionary hit or attack with that particular weapon that you're holding or your unarmed strike during that reaction. You don't have the time to make your double attacks in your bonus action. You don't get that. In relation to whether this gets attached to your actions tab or not, that is entirely up to you. We pretty much know that anytime past level 5 you gain the ability to attack with an extra attack. It comes up to you as the player to actually remember that you're going to use that extra attack. As the Dungeon Master, I could rightfully not prod you or remind you to use your extra attack, and if you flat out forget to use it, that's on you. That isn't on me. And in fact, it would benefit me not to remind you to do that, because then any creature that you're attacking that happens to be in my sphere of control gets to live a little bit longer, essentially. So it is best that you as the player remember at level 5 and whatever other levels that we gain any additional extra attacks if we do, that you now have an increase in how many times you can attack. And that goes through and completes everything for level 5. In relation to level 6, we are gaining an extra key point. We are gaining an additional 5 foot of movement to our speed. And we are gaining a couple of actual features here. The first is a key empowered or chi empowered strikes. And then we're gaining our next monastic tradition feature, which in this case is going to be Wholeness of Body. Let's go ahead and apply the level. Drop that into place. We're first going to deal with our movement, which is handled right off the main tab here. Click this little magnifying glass. And then you want to increase our miscellaneous 10 value here to miscellaneous 15. And that will give us a total movement speed of 40 for this particular character. The next thing we'll want to do is grab our key empowered feature and bring this down, and we already have Wholeness of Body, and we can see that here. Let's see if we need to set these up as actions. In relation to chi empowered strikes, you don't have to go through and set this up as an action, but we need to make an adjustment to our martial arts feature. And if you recall, we set up this martial arts feature so that we could actually make use of an unarmed attack anytime we hit with our fists, so we don't have to worry about doing the math every time. Well, the type changes here from bludgeoning to magical, because you are now harnessing your chi to add power behind your attack in order to actually blow through any defenses that are magically resistant. If that makes any sense. So we just simply need to change this to magic. Oops, that should be now magic. I can't spell today. In just one sec, I just want to confirm that it's not magical. Yeah, so it's just magic as the actual type. And that's everything that we have to do for key empowered strikes. In relation to Wholeness of Body, you are gaining the ability to heal yourself during combat. And this is something that comes from the Way of the Open Hand feature, so we need to make sure that we set this up. Oops. And I just want to confirm. Well, that's an interesting way to do it. That might be a bug. No? Okay. They're doing it 3 times. Okay, I've never seen that done before. Generally, you just see a 3 here. So, you can leave this as is and it will still function, or you can delete 2 of these and just simply put a 3 in this box here, and it will actually apply the bonus. Not entirely certain why they just took the short route here and said do that 3 times. But anyway, this is set up right, so we don't actually have to make any adjustments to this particular ability. Now, as we gain levels, this will increase until we hit a point where we have a maximum of 60 hit points that we could potentially heal. That is a lot of hit points that you can heal yourself for during combat. There is one thing we do need to adjust, though. It can only be used an X number of times between long rests. That means that you can only use this once per day, essentially. So, in case you were not aware, The way that Fantasy Grounds works this, if this field here is daily, that means that you have to execute a long rest in order to actually regain the ability to be able to use it again. If, however, it is set to rest, it means that that ability will regain its uses after both short and long rests, which reminds me I need to adjust this to a 6. There we go. However, there are other options, and I'm not going to worry about covering them here because they don't really apply in relation to the monk right now. But things like scrolls, you can set them up as a one-time use, and it just deletes the whole item from your list, so you don't get to use them again. And that actually finishes everything that we need to do for level 6. In relation to level 7, we are seeing our key point increase, and we're gaining 2 new features, Evasion and Stillness of Mind. So let's go ahead and apply the level. There we go. I'm going to modify our key points, seeing as I'm already on the Preparation tab. And then I'm going to switch to our Abilities tab here and pop open Evasion. And what's the other one? Stillness of Mind. There we go. In relation to the Stillness of Mind ability, if at some point throughout a particular given round you are either frightened or charmed in some way, shape, or form, you have the ability to essentially get rid of that effect. Now, you can only get rid of one effect at a time, and it has to be done essentially as an action. You can't do this as something that you can use for an attack. And because this isn't an attack action, you can only do that one thing. In addition, because you aren't actually executing an attack of any kind, you would not be able to use your bonus action to execute an unarmed strike. Those are the restrictions of what happens here. You're essentially using the entirety of that turn, with the exception of your attack of opportunity or reaction, to clear your mind of the charm effect or the frighten effect. If you are both charmed and frightened, it would take you 2 turns in order to get rid of the effects. And that's how Stillness of Mind works. We'll want to make sure that you add it to your Actions tab here. It's not going to give us any actual feature that we can make use of in the sense of an actionable item, but you're simply telling the Dungeon Master, I'm using Stillness of Mind to clear that charm effect, or I'm using Stillness of Mind to clear that frightened effect. And if they go, wait, what? Then you have the ability to link it, drag and drop it into place so that they can review it. And that sets everything up for Stillness of Mind. In relation to the Evasion feature, you are able to now dodge the full effects of things like fireballs or lightning bolts that require a saving throw to reduce the amount of damage if you succeed on that saving throw. So in the event of a fireball, if you succeeded on the saving throw prior to having evasion, you would suffer half damage. In relation to evasion, you now reduce that damage to 0. That's how evasion works. So anytime you will suffer half the usual amount of damage on a successful saving throw, you are now able to reduce it to no damage in relation to dexterity-based saving throws. And I should be clear on that. It only applies to dexterity-based saving throws. Any strength saving throws or any other saving throw that you have to use does not apply. But this is something that requires an effect in order for you to be able to evade that damage. So you need to drag it into your Actions tab, and this is a monk ability. The issue here is that by default, evasion is actually set up incorrectly. The attempt here is to set it up so that the saving throw is rolled, but then it suffers no damage. The problem is that if you're being attacked by a fireball or a lightning bolt by another creature, it's that creature who's going to roll that particular requirement. So this actually should be changed. We want to delete this effect here and add in a new effect. And we want to make sure that it's an effect. And what we want to do is simply put in evasion, semicolon, evasion. And it will be self, and it should be on next roll. And the reason why I have set it up that way is as follows. I'm going to quickly set up a combat scenario here with the Dungeon Master screen. And do I still? Yes, I do. And what does he have for attacking capabilities? Yeah, okay. So, in the combat tracker, I have an adult black dragon here. That black dragon has the ability to actually force a half-based saving throw. And I'm going to do this without evasion enabled first. So in this case, I succeeded. But I'm still going to suffer half of the damage that is rolled. And you can see this here on this particular thing here. Well, if you enable evasion as the effect on you first, and just to expand out the effects here, this should automatically apply. So what will happen is this. Now let's see if I roll. Oops. Oh, it automatically deselected you. There we go. I'm forcing another roll, but in this case, I failed. But you can see that there is an evasion flag here. And before I roll this damage, I'm actually going to heal this character. Now if I do the damage, I'm only going to suffer half of that damage. So even if I fail on a saving throw, through the evasion technique, I'm going to actually only suffer half of that. Now let's see if I can get it where I can actually succeed on that saving throw. So, way of the open hand. Okay, in this case, I succeeded. Now if I roll the damage, I should see no damage. But I didn't re-enable evasion. Oops. My apologies. Someone was sitting there watching the video going, but. Target. All right, now will this be a save? No. So let's reapply evasion and trigger another roll. That is a success. So in this case, you saw that evasion disappeared, but there's an evasion reference here. Now if I roll the damage dice, I suffer no damage. That's how evasion works. And that's what it should be in relation to a setup, not the other way that you go through and set up. Because it's not you that's rolling the saving throw. It is the opposing party that is actually triggering the saving throw roll in relation to Fantasy Grounds. And that sets up evasion. And that completes everything that we need to do for level 7. In relation to level 8, really the only thing we're gaining here is another ability score improvement and our key point. So I'm going to quickly drop this into place. Go back to the Actions tab, increase our key points, or chi points. I'm never actually sure which pronunciation is correct. I've heard it pronounced key, I have heard it pronounced chi. So I'm not entirely certain in relation to D&D, so I'm going to try to probably use both interchangeably there. And as promised, I'm going to modify our Constitution and bring this up to 17. And the reason why I've done that, if you look, at 15, we had a +2 bonus here. At 17, we have a +3 bonus here. Well, we are now officially missing hit points. When you make an adjustment to your Constitution where the modifier bonus increases, you do get the ability, by the rules of 5th edition, to add those missing hit points to your character's hit point total. In relation to this particular character, my bonus went up by 1 point. That means that I can add 8 additional hit points to this particular hit point total of 59. So that should bring it up to 67, if I'm not mistaken. And the reason for that is the bonus changed by 1 point, and you take that bonus and multiply that by your level, which in this case is level 8. That gives you 8 hit points total. If somehow your ability score was increased by 2 points total, you would be adding 16 hit points in order to bring your hit point total up to the maximum level that you have. But in this particular case, our bonus only went up by 1 point, which means we have to add 8 hit points to this particular total. Brings us up to 67. And that is everything that we have to do for level 8. In relation to level 9, we are now gaining an unarmed movement improvement. We are not, however, seeing an increase in our unarmed movement here. We are still gaining a key point or chi point, and we are gaining a proficiency bonus point here. So let's actually go through and drop this into place. I am then going to go to the Actions tab and take care of the key point increase. And then go to the Abilities tab here and pop open Unarmed Movement again. So in relation to Unarmed Movement, we are now at level 9, gaining the ability to move along vertical surfaces and across liquids on your turn without falling down during the move. What this means is that you can run up a nearly vertical surface, I would say pretty much vertical surface, as long as your turn does not end there, or your round does not end there. Same with running across water, the surface of water, for example, or the surface of an oil pool or something. You can run across that liquid, and as long as your turn doesn't end there, you won't fall. That is the way I interpret it, because in my mind, if you were going up the side of a building, if you're ending your turn there, what are you holding on to? If there's nothing to hold on to. So you can still move 40 feet up that surface, but you shouldn't be able to end your turn on that surface. So I'm actually looking for a little bit of clarification. I have not been able to find a satisfactory answer or explanation as to how that particular improvement, if you will, applies in this particular case, outside of the fact that you shouldn't end your turn there. And that actually covers everything that we have to deal with in relation to level 9. At level 10, we are seeing an increase in our key points. We are gaining an additional 5 feet of movement, and we are now gaining a new feature called Purity of Body. Let's go ahead and drop the level into place. We will adjust key points to 10, and we should also adjust our movement by an additional 5 feet, so we now are at 20 feet of movement. That gives us a 45-foot movement total. Well, what about the ability score, Purity of Body? Let's pop this open. So with Purity of Body, you are now immune to disease and poison. In relation to poison, we can set up an immunity configuration for it, but in relation to disease, that just isn't something that we can apply here. So let's go ahead and do this. Drop this into place. This is a monk ability. And Purity of Body. We want to add an effect and modify that effect. So Purity of Body, semicolon, immune, colon, poison. All in lowercase. And I just want to make sure I have that spelled right. Yes. And that's on self, and it never expires. It is literally there permanently. You are 100% immune to poison. So let's prove that. So within the combat tracker, I actually have a gas spore here that will actually execute a poison attack on this particular target. but I need the effect in place. So I'm going to apply immune to poison. So I'm no longer simply resistant to poison. I can now get rid of that. I am 100% immune to poison. So let's pop open my DM screen here. Drop the actionable token onto the gas spore. There we go. And I'm going to target. I've already had them targeted apparently. So forcing a saving throw, they failed. You will still potentially suffer actual damage, but in this case, you suffered none because you resisted the actual damage itself. In addition, as the Dungeon Master, I shouldn't be able to apply this poisoned ability anymore. So in relation to why this poisoned effect actually still applies to the character, it's because of how the game functions. And in this particular case, yes, you are poisoned, but you can't suffer any damage from it because you're immune to it. You're still legitimately poisoned. You still suffered the puncture wound or whatever gave you the poison. It's still in your system. It just doesn't have any effect, is what it comes down to. So I actually did have this set right. So purity of body, and then semicolon, and there. So that will work just as well as the normal method there. And that completes everything that we need to deal with in relation to level 10. In relation to level 11, we are gaining our next monastic tradition feature, which in this case is going to be Tranquility. And we are gaining an increase in our martial arts damage rolls, which is kind of useful here. Nothing else really changes. So let's go ahead and apply this level. All right. So the monastic tradition, I've already got Tranquility open. Let's open up this one so I don't get that error again. There we go. And then let's go and modify our key points. We're at 11 here. And we need to make adjustments to our martial arts. And I believe our deflect missiles, yes. So we are now doing 1d8 of damage as opposed to 1d6. So let's clear this dice out. And my mouse is acting up again, and add in 1d8. And then do the same here for martial arts. Really? I gotta get a new mouse. Okay, so that takes care of the damage die increase. So with the Tranquility feature here, you are gaining the ability to essentially cast the Sanctuary spell on yourself. So let's pop open the Sanctuary spell here. You become warded, essentially, against any form of attack or spell. So essentially, a creature who targets the warded creature with an attack or a harmful spell must first make a wisdom saving throw. So you are now forcing any creature, NPC, whatever, who decides to make an attack against you or cast a harmful spell against you, with the exception of area attack spells, or area of effect spells, I should say, you're forcing them to make a wisdom saving throw. And if they fail on that saving throw, they need to choose a different target. If they succeed on the saving throw, they can continue to attack you as normal. But let's say you happen to be standing next to a party member who got targeted by a fireball spell. You do not count in relation to the Sanctuary save, which means that they don't have to roll a wisdom saving throw because they're attacking you. They're not. They're attacking the person next to you. You just happen to be in the blast radius, essentially is what it comes down to. The problem is you yourself cannot make any attack or cast any spell that affects or deals damage to an enemy or creature, or you will cancel the effect. So it functions with all intents and purposes like a normal Sanctuary spell having been cast on you by a priest. What does change is that the saving throw is handled by your wisdom modifier, not by the caster's wisdom modifier. So we have to go through and set this up. Now, in our case, our wisdom is fairly decent. We have a +3 bonus here. So drop that into place. I'm just going to copy this and paste that. So we need to actually trigger a new effect on this particular, on this particular feature, and that is an actual cast. And it's going to be a saving throw. Now in this case, it is going to be a wisdom saving throw. It is going to be the wisdom base modifier plus your proficiency bonus. So essentially, for all intents and purposes, normal for a saving throw. So in this case, they will have to save against a DC 15 check. If they fail, they have to choose a different target or essentially lose the spell or the attack that they were about to make. Essentially, think of it as someone walks up to you with a sword, leans their arm back to make the attack, and then for some reason decides not to. That's essentially what would come into play if in the event that they lost the attack. If, however, they chose a different target, they would simply turn to that target and attack them instead. That is how Tranquility works. And that is actually everything that we need to set up for level 11. In relation to level 12, we are simply gaining a key and point increase and an ability score improvement. So let's drop this into place and set up our, where is it? Key increase to 12. Getting a little full in here. Minimize that again, and that, just so that I can see things. All right. Now, what about the ability score improvement? Well, as promised, I'm going to look at choosing a feature. Or a feat, I should say. So give me a moment, I'll be right back. In this particular case, I'm going to choose Sentinel. And the reason for that is it fits very well within the monk's repertoire of abilities. So you can now essentially root a particular creature who's leaving your reach or sphere of influence so that they can't actually leave your sphere of influence. So you're reducing their movement capability down to 0. The other option is that creatures provoke attacks of opportunity from you even if they take the disengage action before leaving your reach. So there are creatures out there that can take a disengage ability or feature, and if they decide to do that, a monk can still attack them with the Sentinel feature. And well, any creature can, any player can. The third benefit is that when a creature within 5 feet of you makes an attack against another target other than you, and that target doesn't have this feat, which is kind of critical to the statement here, you can use your reaction to make an attack against that creature. You don't necessarily cancel out the damage that creature is going to do if they hit the other target, but you can at least do damage to that creature. So you're reacting to the situation doesn't necessarily mean you're canceling out the attack itself. All we do is essentially apply that here. Technically, this could become a actionable item in the sense that you want to drop it into your tabs here, or your action tab. And you want to call this under feats. I don't know why it drops this into place though, other than the fact that, why is it a fixed attack? Interesting. Okay, so they're having the attack roll here as opposed to being able to do this. Now, it would be a melee attack, so in the case of your sickle, you would roll against this. I would argue that in relation to your unarmed strike, you would make use of your martial arts attack ability and roll against this. So I would eliminate this entirely, to be honest. Delete that, just so that you can't use it. But you're still going to trigger that to say that you're using it. And that goes through and sets up everything for level 12. In relation to level 13, We're seeing a proficiency bonus increase, our key and point increase, and we're gaining a new feature called Tongue of the Sun and Moon. Let's close that out and apply our level. Let's deal with our key point first. It's under Monk here, Preparation 13. And then let's take a look at the ability. With Tongue of the Sun and Moon, you are essentially now becoming a linguist in the sense that you can now understand every spoken language as long as you touch the individual in question. You would also most likely make use of a key point here, even though it doesn't actually say that. But you can voluntarily touch an individual with the finger, make use of your chi, and you will now be able to understand that particular individual as long as you maintain that touch. Any creature that can actually speak a language or understand a language will also understand you. So a horse may not be able to speak your language, but it can understand what you can say, even though it might not necessarily comprehend what you're saying. But a slime, no. If you were to try to connect with a slime in some way, shape, or form for some reason, you would not be able to communicate with that slime. It doesn't have the ability to understand any language. This is a role-playing feature primarily, so it's not something you need to link it to your Actions tab, but if you want to, you can do so. And just throw it under the monkey category just so that you can link it into the chat box. But in this particular case, I'm not going to bother. And that actually completes everything that we need to deal with for level 13. In relation to level 14, we are gaining an additional 5 feet of movement, an increase in our key ability point score here, and another feature called a Diamond Soul. So let's apply the level. Deal with our key point. So we're now at level 14. Increase our movement by an additional 5 feet. So we're now at 25 feet of movement. And that is our second last movement increase. And then let's take a look at Diamond Soul. Diamond Soul is one of those feats that I absolutely love. And essentially what it is that you are now proficient in all saving throws. So if you recall, when we first created this character, we had to set up a proficiency tag here, or enable proficiency, I should say, for strength and dexterity, because those were our 2 proficient saving throws. Well, now we get to do that for all of our saving throws. That eliminates all negative penalties to any saving throw that we roll. This is why I said that strength, intelligence, and charisma aren't going to be that big of an issue for this particular monk. Now, granted, you kind of have to play this monk a little bit dumb or a little bit weak, which is kind of ironic on the fact that how much damage you can do. And they may not be an overly charismatic individual, but your saving throws is going to belie all of that. In addition to that, when you make a saving throw, and if you fail that saving throw, you can now expend a key point to re-roll it and take the second result. If you still fail the second result, you still fail the saving throw, you do not get to choose again. You do not get to burn another key point. That is the way that I play that. Otherwise, this becomes super powerful. There's a little bit of balance that has to come into play here. But the Dungeon Master is going to want to know when you're going to use that, and that is going to be a actionable item as a result. And it's literally just here to point to the chat log that you're using it and to drag over the definition of the actual feature so that the Dungeon Master knows exactly how this works and why all of a sudden you're proficient in all your saving throws. And that is actually everything that we need to deal with in relation to level 14. In relation to level 15, we are gaining our key point increase, but at the same time we're gaining a new feature called a Timeless Body. So let's apply our level and then deal with our key point. increase here. So let's, oops, not 16, 15. Oops, 15. There we go. And now let's take a look at Timeless Body. Timeless Body is another one of these really nice features. In relation to Timeless Body, while you as a character still age, meaning that if you start off with a level or a 20-year-old character and you campaign that character through till they're the age of 70, they still have gained that age. But they no longer suffer the effects of that age in the sense that they no longer lose muscle mass, they no longer start suffering damage reduction or anything along those particular lines, although I don't know if 5th edition actually has damage reduction due to age. But you are no longer as frail as you could have been at the age of 70. You also cannot be aged magically, so if you bump into a ghost, you can run through that ghost and not suffer the age effect that you would normally suffer due to that. You can, however, still die of old age, so if your lifespan is deemed to be at the age of 90 for some strange reason, and you turn 90 and a couple of months later you pass away, that is still possible to do. So you don't get to live forever. That's not what happens here. You just simply don't show the effects of what happens when you age. In addition, you no longer need to eat or drink anything. So if you're going through a tough drought of some sort because you're passing through a desert and your party has burned through all of its food, you yourself don't need to worry about that. You can still pass through that desert and not suffer any of the effects of dehydration or lack of food. That's what Timeless Body gives you. It is not something you need to add to your actions page. It is literally just simply there. It's a benefit you as a character gain. And that actually completes everything that we need to deal with in relation to level 15. In relation to level 16, we are going to see an increase in our key points, as well as receive our second to last ability score improvement. So let's apply this level. And go back to our actions tab here. I had a momentary brain fart. I apologize. And now let's take a look at our ability score improvement. So is there anything here I could do to help this character along a little bit better? Well, in relation to our dexterity, I can't increase that any further because it's already at 20. I could choose to take 2 of these points here and increase each one by 1, and in fact that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to bring our strength up to 10 and our intelligence up to 9, just to show you what happens. Now in relation to the change of this to an ability score of 10, we no longer suffered any penalty here, and we actually gained an additional point here for our saving throw. However, in relation to our intelligence, we did not change the penalty in any way, so we still suffer whatever penalty comes off of our modifier score here. That's how that works. And that completes everything that we need to do for level 16. In relation to level 17, we are going to gain our final proficiency bonus. We are going to gain an additional key point. We are now able to do 1d10 of martial arts damage, and in fact this is the last increase that we will see here. And we are gaining our final and most deadly monastic tradition feature here called Quivering Palm. So let's go ahead and apply this level. I am going to first increase our key points, and then I'm going to temporarily switch this so that I can adjust our deflect missiles and our martial arts. Okay, so it's already open. So our damage here is no longer a 1d8, it is now a 1d10. Drop that into place, so 1d10 plus 5. In relation to our martial arts attack, again, it is no longer a 1d8, it is now a 1d10. Alright, and that takes care of both our key point change and our damage die change. So let's take a look at our monastic tradition feature here, which is Quivering Palm. In relation to Quivering Palm, you are now gaining the ability to control a body's natural vibration. So for those of you who are unaware, you might put your hand up and your body looks steady, but in fact you are vibrating so fast due to the way that the nature of atoms work that you just can't simply see it. Well, the monk, through the Quivering Palm feature, gets the ability to control that. And when you hit somebody with an unarmed strike, and it has to be an unarmed strike, it cannot be with a weapon, you can apply the effect if you decide to spend 3 key points. Now at level 17, you have 17 key points, so you have key points to spare. As long as you are on the same plane of existence as that particular creature, that effect will last a number of days equal to your level. So at level 17, that will be 17 days from the point of application. You can then choose to end the effect painfully or harmlessly. If you choose to end the effect harmlessly, you can do so at will and it won't cost an action. If, however, you choose to end the effect and trigger the damage that's going to occur, then that actually takes an action. So in the case of combat, you would spend your action to do that. When that happens, the creature who had Quivering Palm applied to them now has to make a Constitution saving throw. If it fails, it is immediately reduced to 0 hit points, no matter how many hit points it has. Flat out gone to 0. However, if it succeeds, it will only suffer 10d10 of necrotic damage. This means it is actionable. So because this is a Way of the Hand feature, you'll want to drag it into here and set it to the same group as the rest, so Way of the Hand. The problem is that this saving throw is wrong. And the reason why it's wrong is you're using your key. And in case you weren't aware, any key save DC is based off of your Wisdom modifier plus your proficiency bonus. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. So we need to adjust this. And it's going to be A+ ability, which is your Wisdom, plus your proficiency bonus, which brings us up to a DC of 17. And that actually sets everything up for level 17. In relation to level 18, we are now gaining our last movement bonus, our third last of our key points, and we're gaining a new feature called Empty Body. So let's go ahead and apply this. Drop that into place. Let's modify our key points. 18. Modify our final movement adjustment to 30. So our character can now travel 55 feet in a single round. That is nice. You can essentially run really, really fast. And let's take a look at Empty Body. So Empty Body is here. So Empty Body gives you the ability to turn yourself invisible for up to 1 minute, as long as you spend 4 key points to do so. Additionally, if you choose at a later point to spend 8 key points, you can cast the Astral Projection spell without needing any of the material components. While you are invisible, you have resistance to all damage except force damage. When you cast the Astral Projection spell, you can't take any other creature with you. So let's take a look at this particular skill on the Actions tab. This is going to be a monk feature. Oops. And Empty Body is going to be here. So they're already giving you the effect for invisibility, but what they aren't giving you is the resistance to all damage but force damage. So let's see if we can work that into this particular ability here. And so let's go. Really, mouse? Actions, and we want to create an effect. So what we need to do is simply modify this, and this is empty body, comma, all damage. So we are immune, this should be semicolon, immune, colon, all, comma, not force. So the not is the exclamation mark, and that acts as a negation. And that lasts for 1 minute, because it's equal to the effect of the invisibility here, and it is on yourself. And that should actually apply a reduction of all damage except for force damage. Now, in relation to the astral projection spell, let's go take a look at that. So astral projection gives you the ability to essentially project your essence into the astral plane and travel through that plane to another plane that is a material plane. There's a little silver cord that will connect your body to your projection in the astral plane. And if you exit into another location on the material plane, you're essentially going to move your body to that location. It will travel along the cord, and sort of as you exit the portal that you just traveled through, you will be merged with your physical body as you step through. That's how that works. So it's one way to more or less teleport yourself around, but using a portal-based system that is available to the astral plane system. At the same time, your physical body drops or lays down, hopefully you're already laying down, at the location that you left, and you're in essentially a state of suspended animation. You don't age, you don't need food, water, or anything like that. Kind of useful for doing exploration, not so useful in the middle of combat. In addition, unlike the astral projection spell, you can't take anybody with you. You were literally just able to take yourself, and only yourself. But it is something that you get the ability to do, so I'm going to drop that into place and put that there. If you want to read more details about astral projection, I highly recommend going through it. It's an interesting read. But that sets everything up for empty body, and thereby that completes everything for level 18. In relation to level 19, we are gaining our last ability score improvement. We are increasing our key points, and nothing else is really changing. So let's drop this into place, modify our key points to 19. And I'm simply going to take the intelligence here just for brevity of the video and increase it by 2 points to 11. Cancel out that negative point there. And that takes care of everything that we need to do for level 19. In relation to level 20, we are gaining our final key point increase and getting our last feature. Let's first apply the level and deal with the key point so that that's out of the way. And this is the last time that we have to adjust this value. So, okay. Now, in relation to our perfect self ability here, let's pop this open. So, in relation to perfect self, at level 20, if you roll for initiative and you no longer have any key points available to you, you gain 4 key points, that giving you the ability to use 4 key points during that initiative combat, essentially. So, but you have to have burned through all of your key points. Which essentially that means is that you have gone through and used every single one of these particular key points. And this is going to take a little bit. There we go. A little bit quicker. Boom. I no longer have the ability to use any of my key points. Well, now I'm rolling initiative. I can now regain 4 of these back. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I now have the ability to use my key again for up to 4 points worth. That's all Perfect Self does. It's not something you need to action, but it is something you will want to link to the Dungeon Master if they're going, wait a minute, you're cheating. So I recommend you still add it to your actions page and just simply have it there so that you can just quickly link it into place. And that completes everything that we need to do for level 20. And that, in fact, completes the leveling of our monk class through the Way of the Open Hand tradition. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope I will see you in the next one. I wish to thank you for taking the time to watch this particular video. I hope you found it informative and useful to familiarizing yourself with Fantasy Grounds in general, and that you had fun in the process. If you found the video useful and you liked the content of the particular video, go ahead and click that like button to let me know. And if you have any questions specific to the topic covered by this particular video, or just have some comments in general, please feel free to post something in the comment section, and I will do my best to respond to any questions that are asked. Additionally, I do release content quite regularly, and it's generally specific to Fantasy Grounds or 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons at this time. So if you'd like to be notified when new videos come out, go ahead and subscribe and click the notification bell to ensure that notification is sent to you when I release a new video.